Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our first live stream event of this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. So nice to have your company, both if you're watching this in real time, but also if you're watching the recording after the fact. We'll start with the introductions. So I guess most of you will know who I am by now, 2 weeks in. My name's Graham McPhee. I'm the lead educator on the course. You wouldn't have met John Paul yet. I'll let John Paul.
Hi there, my name's Dr. John Paul Fitzpatrick. I am the director of Teach Mindset Limited, and I also am an honorary research fellow here at the University of Strathclyde.
So thanks for joining us, John Paul. Now you'll meet John Paul later on in the course and kind of some of the subsequent weeks. John Paul appears in some of our learning objects and appears in some videos doing some inputs, but the pair of us do the 3 live stream events that happen as part of the course. So week 2, where we are just now, end of week 4, and end of week 6. And how we effectively use these sessions is the chance for us to talk about what's been going on in the course in the 2 weeks preceding. So we've reviewed comments, questions, etc., and we've pulled out some that we think are kind of particularly interesting, and we'll sit and have a kind of conversation, a chat about that. So it gives us a chance to kind of interact with you in a different way as opposed to just replying.
Yeah, a chance for you to ask questions and pose difficult questions for us and see if we can tackle them and deal with them live. And actually, in terms of the course cohort this year, am I right in thinking we've got something like 2,800 participants?
Yep, so just under 2,800 people on the course this time round. We're up over, always put this in, we're up over 3,500 comments, so please don't feel offended if we don't get to reply to all of them. Or and people might have noticed me and kind of doing some things this morning and highlighting some of the things that we might be talking about in this session. But what we're particularly keen on is if you're watching this back, especially after the fact, that we're going to sit and bounce about some ideas. We're going to chat about some of this. And I guess in a sense, we're in a slightly privileged position. We get the chance to do this and we get the chance to say what we think. Mm-hmm. But a lot of what we're talking about, there's a range of different views and ideas about kind of some of the things that we're speaking about. So we would expect there to be a range of different views amongst the participants. So on the page where the live stream recording is posted, feel free to and I would encourage you to come in with kind of further comments and keep the conversation going about the things that we're talking about.
As long as they're not about our Scottish accents, we always get something about our Scottish accents, and there's nothing we can do about it. So apologies for that, if that's...
And we should say this is the one video that won't have subtitles on it, so we'll try our best not to speak too fast and to speak clearly. So we're going to do with you for 40 minutes. We're going to do kind of 3 main things today. The first thing we're going to spend some time talking about is more generally the issue of risk and vulnerability, but in particular the poll that you were asked to participate in week 1. We've got the results from that and some interesting results there, and we'll bat about kind of some of the things there. Secondly, we're going to talk about Billy's story. Billy's story is obviously, in effect, the case study that runs throughout the 6 weeks of the course. 2 weeks into that now, kind of various things happening, various comments being posted, and we're going to kind of use some of those comments for a bit of discussion. And then thirdly, pardon me, just some kind of general questions that people have posted in advance of the session today, and just a couple other comments that we've picked up on that we're going to pick up on. So that's so to start, for the kind of the exercise that you had in week 1, rating risk and vulnerability. So 10, I'm going to say very short scenarios. We should probably underline the words very short. I mean, they're literally no more than a sentence. And it's an introductory exercise. I think it's kind of fair to say that some people find it hard on such little information to be making choices. And we would expect that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And any professional in a professional situation, especially a social worker, kind of child protection worker, etc., we'd be dealing with more information, and we know that. We're not trying to pretend anything otherwise, but just to stimulate some discussion and some exploration of how do we actually think about risk and vulnerability, and what constitutes risk and vulnerability, and how does the risk and vulnerability in one situation compare to another,
and to get some kind of critical thought, and actually I suppose for you to maybe have some empathy for the different and the kind of challenges in decision making as you start to think through the level of resource that's available, the amount of information, the complex range of different factors that influence and impact on assessment and risk assessment and decision making processes. So it's an exercise in critical thought from you, and let's dive in and explore it then.
So if you haven't already, either just now or kind of that, if you go onto the poll page, you'll see that the page in week 1 has been updated with the results percentage-wise. So everybody to choose 3 from 10. And we're not going to run through all the results here. We're just going to kind of talk about kind of some of the main themes.
So what has leapt out?
Right, so there's 4 of the 10 scenarios which get a lot more votes than everyone else. So scenarios 1, 3, 4, and 5 all get, one gets 49%, one 51%, 60%, and scenario 1 gets 85%. And those 4 get more than the other 6 all put together. And some of the other scenarios hardly get any votes at all. So why do we think this is? And you'll see on the page there's a little bit of analysis from myself, just offering some comment in terms of what might be going on, and also kind of looking at the comments that you made in the forum associated with this task. So scenario number 1 gets 85%. So I mean that's really high percentage, like kind of 85% of all our participants saying this is in my top 3. And when we read that, it's no great surprise. A tiny baby who's been given a violent shaking by their carer, who has learning difficulties and is upset because the baby won't stop crying. I imagine, and from seeing the comments, there's a thing there about immediate risk, and it's immediate risk and immediate danger, and kind of people's like that. So it's no great surprise that one's there. And then there's a common theme in another 2 of the top 4. Again, age seems to be a factor. We've got scenario 4, a 6-month-old baby boy who's not had any attention and to eat for 10 hours. Again, we've got this sense of kind of 6-month-old boy, very young, absolutely dependent on adult care, not sure if it's been provided, so that kind of immediate risk. And then 51%, a 4-year-old girl who has a mother who is suffering from depression, has not bothered to feed her for 24 hours. So again, we've got kind of very young. He's obviously more agency than a baby or a 6-month-old, but nonetheless still very much reliant on adult carers. And I guess the phrase "and who has not bothered to feed her for 24 hours," that and it's probably it's worded that way
contentiously.
Kind of purposely.
We hope we're provoking reactions in everything that you're reading and doing and engaging with on the course.
So I think in all these ones there's and from seeing the comments in the forums, a sense of immediate danger, immediate vulnerability, immediate threats, and that's why people are voting these ones high. We've also got scenario 3, which is it's different in the sense it's a 15-year-old girl who was recently befriended by a man who's persuaded her to do sexual things to him in exchange for money and affection. And that gets 49%. And again, I don't think there's any great surprise that's gathered so many votes in that sense, in terms of the power differential, issues of kind of potential exploitation and that immediate risk in a sense. So these 4 scenarios have gathered more than all the others put together, and then some. But we've pulled out kind of one particular comment, and let's read this out and then think about that in relation to some of the scenarios that got less votes. So we got a comment here from a Debbie Deldy. So Debbie, thanks for your comment here. I'm going to read kind of Debbie's comment out in full because I think it's really helpful. Each scenario had potential risks. So straight away saying, right, well, some might be more immediate than others, but they all had potential risk. How do you categorise which scenario posted most risk? Well, that was the task. Incredibly hard to decide, so I base my choices on immediate threat to life's well-being, but let's not forget the implications of long-term abuse detailed in some of the examples, and how detrimental that can be to the emotional and physical well-being as these children grow up, in which case the potential risk is in fact enormous. And I think Debbie, it's a great comment in terms of saying that I've made my selections here based on that immediacy, and certainly in the 3 scenarios that have got the most votes, then absolutely that immediacy is there. But I think what Debbie is underlining is that actually every scenario, if not, if untreated, if left to continue, there's real potential risk. Perhaps not as immediate and kind of slightly different in some way, but nonetheless a risk that has got real.
So let's look at it from a slightly different perspective then, and look at one of the ones which has the least amount of votes, and just unpick and explore that. So let's look at the 15-year-old child who's been teased at school. They're wearing shoes that have both got holes in their soles and trousers which are stained and threadbare. So, and as you come to explore your journey through the course, you will realise that I have a bugbear about poverty and the relationship with being in, vulnerability and poverty and the issues that are connected to that. So this 1% of you all were kind of concerned about this. Again, probably through the context in terms of assessing it in terms of immediate threat and risk. But let's unpick this a bit more. So it is looking very much like that there could be issues of, you could read into it, issues of neglect, issues of financial strain in the family. And certainly if I was a teacher or a helping professional working with a child in that school, I would be kind of asking questions about the kind of family circumstances, what's going on for that child, what does that do in terms of mental health impacts for the child and their readiness to learn. So it's a lower kind of risk in terms of the assessment of participants that have went through this particular poll, but I think it's certainly indicative of a higher kind of concentration of poverty and worthy of interrogation. But of course, in times of difficult decision making based on a finite amount of resources, then this could potentially not even register on anyone's radar and always be accepted as the norm.
Yeah, and I think that's a real important point, and something that we'll definitely come back to as we go through the course, especially in the final couple of weeks. And obviously we're aware we've got participants from a whole range of countries, but I guess we're kind of sitting here in Glasgow in Scotland, and in the UK, kind of thinking about the UK context, and one very much of financial austerity and reduced services, especially reduced services for families, communities and individuals in need. And this is a kind of really important point, again, and making the link here to if immediate risk is our priority, and there's an absolute logic to that being, and a need for that to be the case. But one of the dangers then is when you've got less resources, that everything's getting drawn towards those high tariff cases where there's an immediate risk, but cases such as this slip under the radar.
And then you're stuck in a cycle of only doing crisis intervention, whilst many more people then are experiencing very, very difficult family and life circumstances. So it's really interesting.
And really, there's a link there to themes in Billy's story, isn't there? So thanks to everybody who participated in the poll. I pulled out another couple of comments. Jane Gibson, Jane, thanks for your comment, and you can sum things up nicely. I found choosing only 3 extremely difficult. There's a lot of people kind of making comments along that line, and Anne Walsh, Anne, thanks for your comment as well. And again, Anne said, many of the scenarios there was a serious nature. However, my choices were based on the child's age and if they were at immediate risk. So it's absolutely logical that people were being drawn towards that. But one of the themes we'll keep coming back to is, right, that's fine as far as it goes, but what are we doing as a system, as a set of services, as communities, as a country to try and support vulnerable children when there perhaps isn't the obvious immediate risk, but there's a whole lot of concerns and vulnerability. And I say there's connections to Billy's story. So hopefully already you've kind of got the sense of kind of how Billy's story's work. It's going to kind of unfold over the course of the 6 weeks. Now, it's kind of worth re-emphasising that the Billy's story is fictional. No, Billy's not a real person, but the story is very much based on reality. So in terms of the kind of the issues that we're exploring via Billy's story, certainly in a Scottish context, there are literally thousands of Billies and up and down the country, and thousands of families like Billies up and down the country experience some of the issues and challenges that Billy are. So it's very much a relevant example for us to be thinking about. So you've had the first 2 weeks where you get kind of introduced to kind of some of the things that are going on with Billy. I guess there was a kind of strong focus in week 2 in terms of getting a clear sense of Billy's mum's kind of mental health issues and the impact that has on her to care for or not care for Billy. Also get a sense of kind of Billy's perhaps kind of inconsistent relationship with his father and some of the challenges that presents, but also been introduced to kind of something a bit more positive in terms of his relationship with Mr. Merton at his high school and that kind of that kind of mentoring and friendship there. But no, we asked people to comment on kind of especially after week 2, do you view Billy as being more or less vulnerable now? And we got a whole range of comments, and the first one I pulled out is from CB. So I'm presuming you know who you are, CB, if you're listening to this. So thanks for your comment, and you say that the doctor is aware of mum's poor mental health condition, and I guess about that I find interesting here, CB, you were saying, so I would like to think that there would be conversations happening between the doctor and the school, which would be passed on to social workers. Hopefully this would be enough for Mum and Billy to get support. And I guess there's a bit, in an ideal world, we would like to think that as well, but going back to the point that you just made about the scenario that you picked out in the poll, I think the sad thing is, just now in a Scottish context, when we're thinking about the way resources and services are, certainly in a big city like Glasgow, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's fairly unlikely that Billy and his family would
actually present enough of a challenge at this stage, I think, to warrant particular concern or intervention. In a Scottish context, we have a form of support called home supervision, and this is an area I looked at in terms of research here at the university. And what was really interesting when conducting that study of children who were given this thing called home supervision was that the difference between those who were receiving this support and their classmates sitting beside them who maybe hadn't done enough to come to the attention of social services, but was living in the same poverty, living in the same difficult family circumstances, if not more complicated, there was very, very little difference. It's a lot of these decisions, most of these decisions are financially driven and not necessarily based on the needs of families or children that are encountering issues, and that's a real challenge.
It is, and it's probably why we've written Billy's story in the way that we have, because as is evident from the comments, lots of people are kind of recognising kind of lots of vulnerability and lots of potential for, well, could we provide support here? It would be good if we could do this. But again, no, one of the refrains we keep coming back to is, in terms of what you've seen in the first 2 weeks, and think about comparing this to the previous exercise. Think of other children either the same age as Billy or a bit older, a bit younger, who are presenting much more acute problems, much more, back to this bit, about immediate problems, then, and often those will be the cases and the scenarios where resources are getting kind of pointed towards them. So that's not us saying that these aren't very real needs and vulnerabilities. It's just kind of asking about asking questions about the scope and ability of the system and the services to actually cope and offer anything.
There's an interesting, kind of moving on a bit, comment here from Jeffrey Sapsed. Hi Jeffrey, thank you very much for your comment. And Jeffrey says that he thinks that Billy's struggling with attachments due to mum's bout of mental illness, dad's inconsistent contact, and goes on to say, though, I'm glad that Billy's talking to a guidance teacher who may help him to form an attachment. I mean, that's actually interesting in terms of thinking about how we care for vulnerable children and whose role it is in a society. So in your country context where you're sitting just now, it would be interesting for you to think through the number of different people that are involved in a family's life that is maybe experiencing similar kind of levels of difficulty to Billy's situation. And does it come from youth workers? Does it come from family workers, teachers? who is it that's providing that interest and support and need when it's maybe not coming from the necessary family. But all of the research states that the intervention of a caring, supporting, loving adult, no matter what position or where they're located, it could be a coach, a mentor, somebody connected to sport, that provides that support and interest in them, can make a huge difference to young people's abilities to survive and thrive difficult family circumstances. So that's really, really kind of worth bearing in mind, and worth doing that kind of exercise and thinking about your own kind of social welfare set up in the country that you're watching this from.
Yep, and that's also the reason we've picked out Jeffrey's comment. It's kind of really nice. I mean, Jeffrey's not alone in doing this, but the amount of people recognising the importance of the role that the guidance teacher is providing, and kind of thinking about that in terms of kind of attachment and resilience and kind of Billy's own well-being, and just the point that you're making there about there can be a variety of people in a variety of roles who can be these significant other and support for children and young people, and for other adults also as well, and for us to be thinking about that kind of widely and collectively, especially again in the context of we've got less resources for frontline services often, so different people can play different roles.
And actually, I suppose, how often or what are the communication systems like? So if you've got all these different people playing a part of a role in somebody's life, and maybe nobody's got the overall whole picture, then that communication between the different people, and teachers, social workers, mental health specialists, becomes all that more critical. And I suppose is in part why so many people fall through the cracks and don't get the needs that they need. They don't get the support that they need, even in terms of the help they require at the point where they require it.
Absolutely. So we've pulled out some other comments. I just want to kind of draw a little bit. So the comments from Kirstine Marshall. So Kirstine, kind of thanks very much for your comments. It was kind of quite a long post, but I kind of like it at the end when Kirstine kind of summarises it, what may prove helpful to Billy and his family as they move forward. And she starts with support for mum's mental health. I really like the fact that actually the recognition that the best way we can support Billy is by supporting his mum and her kind of mental health needs. More consistent contact arrangements with Dad. We'll pick that up in that a couple of questions on. Education support plan, including counselling and after-school activities, so kind of feed into what you're talking about there. And then also, actually, she mentions joining youth clubs, so it's thinking about kind of what are kind of some of the kind of wider, more community-based supports. But I really like the fact, Kirstine, that kind of what you've got up top is support for mum's mental health needs, and kind of recognising actually the best way, or arguably one of the best ways to support Billy is not doing something directly with him, but it's something with his environment and with his support network.
Absolutely.
Similarly, we got a comment from Alice S. So Alice, thanks for your for your comment. She talks about being more concerned for Billy. Talks about mother's mental health impacting him significantly, and she says that his environment is uncontained, and obviously the theme of containment is one participants have been introduced to alongside attachment, and it is worth thinking about what are the containing factors kind of for Billy just now. Mr. Merton is obviously providing something, but both mum and dad in different ways in terms of what we've seen this week. There's different things going on there, which it's not to say it's all negative. There's some positives in there, but equally there's some more negative factors in that sense of kind of providing kind of stress and consistency, etc. That won't be helping Billy to manage and regulate his own emotions, feelings.
And it's becoming a major kind of global pressing problem in terms of the reported increases of young people who are experiencing kind of mental health issues around an inability to regulate their own anxiety and stress, and a huge kind of emphasis on kind of thinking through the impact of adverse childhood experiences on our children and young people, and what can we do to give them the tools and strategies to be able to regulate themselves to an extent before the point of need. So earlier intervention, and in a Scottish context, I think that's something we struggle with in terms of having adequate resource. Again, there's a theme here, but in terms of not having enough skilled mental health practitioners and kind of teachers who are skilled in providing that in early years and through kind of primary and secondary education. So that theme of containment, and where does that go if you've not got the caring, loving support of someone that's interested in you? How many children don't have that? That causes me anxiety. I need to find a way of containing that. You'll have to do that for me later on. But it's really, really kind of interesting, and it's great to see people identifying and recognizing that already in their course materials. So keep it up.
Yep. And one last comment about Billy's story from Lee Smith, and Lee's great comment. I've picked out for this reason, and I think it sums up nicely a lot of what's going on. There are various factors going on that would impede the development and maintenance of a secure attachment for Billy. Poverty, his mum has poor mental health, she works long hours and often isn't at home at the same time as Billy. They do not have a support network of family and friends. And what I like really about that is that there's nothing judgmental or blaming or anything in there about kind of recognising some of these really stressful factors that are at play. Billy seems to be under a lot of stress. He worries about his mum and will probably try to keep that to himself to prevent his mum worrying about him. And so that, and again, whilst Lees doesn't mention the phrase containment, that there's a kind of strong underpinning theme there. But again, I really like the almost a sense the kind of values that are underpinning that post, in terms of it's not about kind of blaming mum or dad or anybody else. It's about kind of recognising just the range of stressful factors that are at play. So Billy's story will continue into week 3 and beyond, and again we'll be discussing Billy's story again in week 4 and again in week 6, and keep that going in the forums. Now for the last 10-15 minutes or so, we've got some more general questions that were posted in advance of the event today. So kind of 4 or 5 to kind of get through. So the first one came from Nicola Brown. So Nicola, thanks for posting your question. Do you know if teachers are trained in attachment as part of their degrees? If not, do you think this should be the case? So I guess I'm sitting here as somebody who feels like in a former life. It was that long time ago. I kind of started life by completing a primary school teaching degree. I never taught, moved into residential childcare and social work, but and it's gone back a few years now, so I think it would be fair. We're answering this in the context of Scotland, but no two degrees are exactly the same. So how somebody looking at, for instance, the Strathclyde teaching degree could differ to Aberdeen or to Liverpool or Sheffield or anywhere else, and else there's kind of core curriculum. In some ways, that there's every university will kind of build its course up in the way it sees fit. I would imagine most teaching degrees have got something on this. So
yeah, I'm a bit the same but slightly different from yourself, Graham, in that I have been in the world of social work, and in the last few years then kind of jumped the species barrier, and I'm now in the shady world of education. So I'm doing a lot of training of teachers across the country. So yeah, my assessment of it from dealing with teachers is yes, they do, but it's not in depth. It's usually covered more in after their initial teacher training. There's a huge kind of teachers are facing across Scotland, and again, obviously we're talking this in a Scottish context, but huge awareness of having to adapt their classrooms and their teaching strategies to be able to take account of attachment factors, to take account of young people who are maybe experiencing levels of trauma in classrooms, which then impacts on their readiness to learn.
Yep.
So from my point of view, I would make it absolutely mandatory that Bowlby's work and others' work on attachment should be a core part of every helping professional that's working with vulnerable children and young people. It's not necessarily, and again, this is my opinion, given the prominence and importance that it should have. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In terms of ideally, this would be prominent in the education and training of so many different caring and education professions, and because it's so central to a lot of the work that we're trying to do.
And we were chatting earlier, weren't we, about the difference in, again, in a more of an international context of the profession of child and youth care, and how that has more of an interdisciplinary kind of core components of social pedagogy, for example, where teachers, nursery educators, social workers, residential care staff all have a bit more of a common core understanding of child development and attachment issues, relationship issues, etc. Which I just think makes sense. But I'm biased slightly as.
You're giving away some spoilers there, because in some future weeks we'll look at different professions of practice internationally, and we'll be.
Apologies for that. That's because we're doing time travel. It's hard being a Graham and a John Paul when you're doing this, Mook.
Right. So social pedagogy and child and youth care will be kind of things that we talk about more then. So thanks for the question, Nicola. I think as much as possible, but recognising within, especially people doing postgraduate 1-year teaching degrees, there's so much other content to be filled in terms of teaching pedagogy and subject matter and a whole range of other issues. But equally, we've got more and more young people presenting at school, presenting a whole range of different issues. So a knowledge of attachment, containment, child development is so helpful and in many cases essential. So there's a real challenge there in terms of how we create effective curriculums. So thanks for the question. Now we're going to move on to Angelic Girl F, so somebody else under a pseudonym. So thanks for your question. Right, so has there been a rise in the number of looked after children since austerity began in 2010? And is there a causative link between austerity and the number of children classified as vulnerable? So really good question. So kind of thanks for that. So I've not got this to show on the screen, but I pulled out kind of some statistics. So now you asked going back to 2010. So what I've got is the figures for 2007 and 2017. 2017 is the most recent figures we've got. This is in Scotland, by the way, I should say. And we should say this, it might be interesting for people elsewhere to try and access what's going on in your country, in your territory in relation to some of this. So what do we see in comparison from 2007 to 2017? Well, yes, we do see more looked after children. We see, roughly speaking, the numbers going up from just over 14,000 to just under 15,000, so nearly an increase of 1,000. But perhaps what's more interesting is that the way those children have been placed and being looked after, and we see some particular changes there. So whilst the overall number is going up, we're looking after less in residential accommodation. We're looking after less are being left at home with their parents, and we see far more being placed in kinship care with friends and family. And we see more, or roughly the same, being placed with kind of foster carers as well. So we see an overall trend going up, but we see some different decision making about kind of how we're looking after those. And say that probably the three most interesting bits. I mean, we'll talk about residential childcare a bit more in future weeks. We see overall the number there going down. I think really significant, we see quite a significant decrease, children being left at home with their parents, but quite a significant increase in children being placed with kinship care, with kind of friends and family. But going back to your question, is there a link? Well, we know there's an absolute link between austerity and poverty.
Yes.
And that's factual, that's undeniable, and we see poverty, certainly speaking in a UK perspective, we see poverty levels increasing, we see increasing amounts of children and families in poverty. And
we've got a big focus on that coming up as well in the course. But that's very most definitely linked.
And we know, likewise, research tells us that in terms of risk indicators and vulnerability for poor outcomes, poverty is a major factor, common factor. So bringing all that together, then yes, austerity equals poverty, poverty equals increased vulnerability, increased risk issues, and when that's happening, then the likelihood of more children being placed in situations that are deemed to be too risky or too vulnerable, and authorities having to kind of to provide services. Although, as we see, the way in which those services have been provided have kind of changed slightly over the last couple of years in terms of some overall trends. This is all themes that we're going to come back to as we keep moving through, and certainly without us going off on a political soapbox and going off on a rant, just that as we push more communities and families into poverty and into increased levels of poverty, then that brings a whole range of issues with it.
Absolutely.
And there's a real issue here of social justice. We've got just a couple of questions I want to make sure that we mention. Now, we've got a question here from Anne Alexander. So thanks for your question. To a certain extent, I think we've already answered this in saying who can talk to Billy and his parents about how to improve the situation? How could it be improved? I think I would actually go to what we were talking about before in terms of the last comment that we got from Louise and the comment from Kirsten in terms of recognising that perhaps support for Billy's mum is the key to this. Is a kind of key to this in terms of kind of thinking about where is Billy going to be kind of safest and happiest and most able to kind of grow and develop. So if we truly want to kind of help the situation, supporting Billy's home situation, supporting mum. But as we said right back at the beginning, sadly, that might be quite difficult to achieve now in terms of, at this point, in terms of resources, because they wouldn't be viewed as a necessarily a high priority or emergency. And so likewise, Loretta McClarty asking, what can social work help to do? Try this again. What can social work do to help this family? Billy needs time to be a child, not a carer. So how can we get help and in what form? Well, again, I think that in many ways the number one help that we can give is supporting mum. But you raise a really important issue here, which we will explore further in future weeks, Loretta, when you ask the question about, or you make the point about Billy needs time to be a child, not a carer. We won't say too much more about that just now, but that is a theme that comes up as we go forward. And then we'll get just kind of one final comment here from kind of Alison V, and kind of it's quite a nice comment to kind of finish with. I've got a lot out of this course. This week I found the information on containment theory very useful. I found myself thinking of times in my life when I or others have struggled to manage our emotions in situations, and I can see how containment theory applies. I've also looked at additional resources suggested, which have been good. But it's this point about kind of thinking about how some of this might apply to ourselves, and especially this idea of, because we've all experienced times, and we all do experience times where we feel stressed, pressured, and we can feel uncontained. And I can certainly identify with that, kind of working in university, and as we get round about assignment and exam time, and kind of thinking about how students, and I mean, certainly in the UK, there's increasing awareness of kind of mental health issues, the topic of mental health issues and mental health supports for students, about the huge stresses and strain that are placed on students, and about how we help to support and contain students in that scenario. So this theme of containment and support goes way beyond Billy's story, goes way beyond what we're talking about
facet
here.
of life.
Yeah, and especially I would say within the caring profession, where a lot of people who are involved in trying to support in very kind of risky and challenging kind of situations, and we've got to make sure that we as professionals, as workers,
take sufficient care
of ourselves and our colleagues. So I think that's a kind of really important point to finish with.
Yep.
But I think that's us just got to about time. So we've got pretty much got through everything that we set out to do, which is good. So thanks very much for your participation on the course today. Like I said at the beginning, I would be very surprised if there's not some things that we said that you either, well, hopefully there's some things that you agree with, but I would be very surprised if there's some things that you you might not disagree, but you might have an alternative perspective on. So use the forum on this page to keep the kind of conversation going.
And keep your level of engagement up. Keep contributing, keep supporting, keep kind of asking questions, and keep applying it to your own country's circumstances, and keep asking the critical questions. And let's just see what unfolds with Billy's story and what happens next.
And then just a kind of final prompt, we'll have another live stream in week 4 and then again in week 6. So please, if you do have specific questions about anything that we're doing on the course, anything that we're talking about, go onto the page for the live stream in week 4 and then again in week 6. Post your question there, and that'll make sure that we get the chance to talk about it in the session. So until then, thanks very much.
Thank you.